Hey friends, Savannah here, and today's sketch is all about cozy vibes, warm coffee on a rainy day. I'll be using my custom brush set, which you can find in the description down below. We're using Procreate. I also have a color template and the outline layer that you can follow along with. So let's go ahead and get started. Usually I tell you to change that background color, but we're going to change things up today. So create a new layer, bring it below the outline layer, and we're going to add some shapes in the background where the window is. You're going to grab that yellow green color, that circle brush, and we're going to just draw shapes like I mentioned. Don't worry about it looking perfect. We're going to do a Gaussian blur on this, but we're going to just add some shapes here. We're going to do this yellowish green color. We're going to do this bluish green color, and then we're going to use that grayish kind of creamy color for the background. And then, like I said, we're going to do that Gaussian blur. And like I said, it looks really sloppy. That's fine. We're going to blur it out. And now it looks a little bit better. It looks like maybe a tree line in the background. So now we're going to add a new layer and we're going to work on the window area. Grab that darkish brown color and start tracing and filling in the shape of this window here around the edge. And it's not going to be a brown window. We will add some lighter colors to it. It's going to be kind of a creamy white color. The brown is just more of the shadow layer, but I'm just adding this color in so that I can see it against the white background because it just makes it easier once I'm adding in the details and also making sure that I filled in the space. So when I go to alpha lock, I know that I have all the areas filled in correctly. And now you're going to do a new layer and we're going to fill in a bunch of these shapes here. So we're going to do the pot first. I grabbed this dark red color for this because again, it's easier to see where I'm filling in and if I have it completely filled in for this space before I start adding those details in when I do that alpha lock. So we're going to start with this dark red color. We're going to fill this pot in and then we're going to fill in a couple of these other items as well before we start adding in details. And I'm going a little outside of the drawing layer here. As you can see, I'm going into the books layer because the books are going to be in front of the pot. And so I just want to make sure that I have the pot fully behind those books. So if I don't end up drawing the books fully to where their image is, I have that pot behind it. So it's not going to look white or stark or anything like that. Now we're going to work on the cactus layer. So make sure you add that new layer. We're still using the circle brush for all of this. And we're just outlining and filling these objects in with one of the colors that we're going to be using. I'm using a little bit of the darker colors for this. You can use the lighter ones, whichever ones you want to do, because we are going to build up on these layers and add highlights and shadows anyway, so it doesn't really matter what color you pick here. I just prefer the dark so I can see if I have any of that lighter color peeking through from the background. And for this one, I did turn the outline layer off so that I can see if the lines are looking correct because this is sitting kind of in front of the pot. I don't want to go too far down into the pot because it's going to be on top of it. So if you have those lines going down into it, that's not how, the plant works. It goes inside the pot. And so you can do this behind. It doesn't matter which layer you have on front. You just have to be mindful of the pot edges wrapping around the cactus. If you do have the pot in front of the cactus, just make sure that those edges are erased away so the cactus shines through. Otherwise, you could do it this way how I'm doing it. So I'm just being mindful of the bottom edge of the cactus here. And now we're going to do the books. So we're going to do the books each on their own layer. So add a new layer. We'll do the bottom book first. I start with the bottom one because the other ones are stacked on top. So when you're adding in your layers, the layer at the top is the one that's the closest to you on the screen. The layers as you go further down the stack, the further they are. So this book is at the bottom of the stack of these books. So I want this first, and then you add in the other layers on top. And to simplify things as you're doing these books, to do a straight line, draw the line the best you can and then hold your pencil on the screen and it will snap to a straight line that you could drag and drop it wherever you want. So see how I drag that pen marking straight and then it wasn't quite how I wanted to align it with that book. So I just moved it up and down. That will keep a straight line for you. I don't draw straight lines perfectly. If you don't, that's fine. If you do, that's great. That's an awesome skill to have, but I don't personally, I'm not able to draw straight lines. So this is a nice little trick that you can use in Procreate to draw those straight lines. And for these books, you can pick any of the colors in the color palette. I picked this dark green one because I really like this color, so I wanted to bring more of it in. But then also I did more brown for the other two books. So again, use any colors that you want for these books here. Any of the ones that are in the color palette, you can even do completely different ones. You could do bright colored books if you want. You could do red book. You could do really anything that you want from the colors. But these are the ones that I picked for these books. And again, we're just filling in the general shapes for these objects at first, and then we'll go back through and do the details. So we'll add in the details from the books, the pages here. We'll add in all of the other details on the pot. I kind of made it a little bit more of a glossy pot, so we'll add those details in, the cup, everything like that. But for now, we're just doing the shapes just to see visually if we like the colors before we move on, if we like the shapes of the things before we move on, before we add those details. And now we will go ahead and add in the third book here. Again, every so often you'll want to just turn that outline layer off just to make sure that the lines are looking how you want, that you're not missing any color, because once again we go into the details phase, if you alpha lock and you notice that you're missing a filled spot, you're not going to be able to color over that with the alpha lock. You have to turn alpha lock off, add in that color, and then turn it back on. The reason we use alpha lock, or I use alpha lock a lot for coloring in things, I do all of my colors on that layer. So some people like to do separate layers and do a clipping mask. I'll talk about that in a second, what the difference is there. But I like to do all of my detail work on that same layer. There's pros and cons to it, with the size of the paper and the quality of the paper, the virtual paper here for the Procreate app. You're limited to how many layers you want. And so that's why I kind of do all of my detail work on one layer. Also, I feel like it's a little bit more closer to traditional art. You don't have the luxury of doing all these different layers. And then if you mess up, you just delete that layer and start again. Yes, we are kind of doing that with each of these objects having their own layer, but with the detail work, I like just doing all on the same layer because it, again, makes it feel a little bit more traditional. And that's what alpha lock does. So when you alpha lock it, you can add details and it will stay within that shape that you created. So if I tried to draw outside of the lines essentially, then it wouldn't do anything because it stays within that shape. With clipping mask, people tend to use clipping mask. I use it sometimes when I'm adding special effects like the shadows. When I'm doing different blend modes, I'll do clipping mask typically. But with clipping mask, You do that above the layer that you want to add details to, and then what that does is essentially the same thing as if you alpha locked. It confines everything that you add to that bottom layer. However, if you mess up, so let's say you want to do shadows on a different layer and highlights on a different layer, you could do two clipping masks to that layer. So let's say it's the book, you could do two clipping masks to that layer. The first clipping mask could be the shadows, the second one's the highlights. And then if you're not liking how the highlights are, if you want to change the colors of the highlights, you can easily do that without affecting the book, the original book or the shadows. So there's pros and cons to each. You can do clipping mask if you want to. I just prefer to do it mostly as alpha lock and doing it all on the same layer, but that's kind of the main difference. Now we're going to go ahead and do the cup here, and then we'll start working on some details here. We have details around the window, the cactus, all the books, the pot, and then I will show you how I do raindrops against the window here towards the end. And now that we have the shapes filled in, we're going to go through and alpha lock all of these layers. Again, I kind of explain why I do my alpha lock. You could do clipping mask here if you want to add details on separate layers, but we're just going to go ahead and set that up now so then we can go in and add the details. In this layer 10, I'll show you what I do with this in a little bit, but we're going to just bring that down below the window frame layer here, so between the glass and the window frame, and I'll show you what to do here later. But for now, we're going to grab that circle blend brush, the lighter white color, and we're going to work on the window frame here first. And we're going to keep using that white on the side here. So to create that straight line that I just created in that image, just hold your pencil down, just draw a straight line, hold that pencil down, and then hold your finger down on the screen and it'll adjust it to a straight line. We're just going to keep blending this out. I want it to be brighter towards the center where the window is because there's a lot of sunlight kind of coming in, even though it's a rainy day. There's still a lot of light coming in, so I want it brighter towards the window and then darker as we go further away. So just keep that in mind as you're adding in these colors. And we're using that round blend brush for this because it does blend it very nicely. It is pressure sensitive, and so you can use light presses to just blend that color in softly. You can even go, harder press to make more of that pigment pop. So we're just gonna keep doing that, keep blending these colors in for this window. It doesn't need to be overly complex, but just keep working on this until it's starting to look how you want it for that window. And I'm just going to keep going back and forth over these colors. So again, just keep blending out until it's looking how you want. Some areas I want them to be a little bit brighter. Some areas I want them to be a little bit darker. So I'm just pulling in those colors as I'm building up these layers to see where I want to add, those shadows and those highlights as I'm doing this. And then we do want to make sure that we add a shadow underneath all of these objects on the windowsill. And so make sure you grab that darker color and start adding in that shadow. We can go even darker, which I did do here because it wasn't dark enough for me. So grab that color, go to that color wheel, and you can grab a darker color for the shadow. We're just going to add that in here again because the objects are here. The light source is coming from that window. I wanted to make sure we have a shadow underneath those objects. And we're going to just keep blending this out so it looks like it's a little bit more natural of a gradient. So you can keep pulling in the color from the windowsill. You can pull in more of that dark and just keep blending until it looks a little more natural. And now let's go ahead and work on the cactus pot. And so we're going to grab that medium red tone. And I went lighter towards the left side of the pot and darker towards the right side because a lot of that light from that window will be hitting it on the left side. But the books on the right side are kind of blocking that light source still. So we want it to be more dark on the right side. So more shadows on the right and lighter on the left side. So we're going to keep adding in some color here, being mindful of how a pot look. So you have the lip around the top here. It goes indented on the inside there, and then kind of like a lip on the bottom again, where it'd be sitting in like a tray where it catches the water. So make sure you keep that in mind. We're just gonna be adding colors here, and then we will build up again more of that shadows and highlights here. But we're just gonna keep building up the colors here until it's looking how we want to look for this pot. And all of this, again, we're using that circle blend brush, so it'll just help it blend even more naturally. So again, we're just kind of lightly adding in the shadows here. I'm going a little bit heavier handed as I'm going closer to the books because I want more of that shadow to be present there and less on the left side. So I'll kind of lightly, I'll press harder on the right side. And then as I go left, press a little bit more lightly, and then we're going to add even a little bit more light on the left side here. A lot of this is just really building up on those colors. So experiment with it a little bit. You can, go with any colors that you want to, but I'm going to add in some kind of yellowish color here. I'm going to make it look a little bit shiny, like the pot has like a glaze over it. And so I want to make it a little bit more shiny. You can keep it more dull. There's a lot of pots that are dull. There's a lot that are shiny. So really whatever style you want. I just went for more of a shiny glossy style. So if you want to do that, you can follow this section along. Otherwise, you could fast forward. But again, we're just adding a lot of details to all of these areas, just going over it with the same colors, kind of perfecting how we want it to look. Sometimes we might go a little bit too heavy with the dark tones, so we need to lighten them up. Sometimes we go a little too bright. And so again, this is just where you want to keep building up on those layers using that circle blend brush to add in those details. Then I'm gonna go in with a little bit of this white because again, it's a little bit of a glaze. You're gonna have that shininess. I'm not going too heavy-handed with the pressure. I want it to be a little bit lighter and blended more with that brown color that we added. But in some areas, as you can see, I do add a little bit more white. So I press a little bit harder on some of the areas, but then I'll try to blend out a little bit so it's not so stark. And then I'm just going back over it a little bit because again, it was very bright white. I'm going back over it with that brown that we picked up for the bottom layer just to soften it a little bit. And again, I'm just keep going over it with this lighter color. If you are happy with how it's looking, you can definitely skip ahead. But again, I just want to keep going over it with these colors just very lightly. Still using that circle blend brush because that blends these colors very nicely together. I'm just going to keep going over it until I like it before I move on to that next part. And I do want to make a little bit darker on the inside where the cactus is sitting. So I'm going to add a little bit of this dark reddish color. And then I'm going to actually hop over to the books, work on the books before we get to the cactus and the coffee cup. And then we will add raindrops to the background. So what I'm doing here is I grab that white-ish creamy color and I'm gonna start adding in the pages here of the book. Again, we're using that circle blend brush and I'm just very lightly making these lines across the surface. I still kind of want to bring in that original color we have down below because I think that's going to give it more of a cohesive style and make it look a little bit more like pages in a book, but we'll add in some more details. I will make one side a little bit darker, so the side that's furthest away from the window is going to be slightly darker, a little bit more dark gray, and then the side to the right that's a little bit closer to the window, that's going to be lighter. So just keep that in mind again where your shadows and highlights will be in your scene. You might have it a little bit different. Maybe you have it where the light's coming from behind the viewer because you have a light back there. Whatever you decide to do, it's up to you. But the way I have mine, that light's coming from the window, so I'm making the pages on the right side lighter because that light's hitting it, whereas the pages that you're seeing closest to you, those would be hitting the shadow. So that's the one thing. And then we're just going to lighten up the book on top a little bit because again, there's going to be shadow and so and light coming in. So I just wanted to highlight that contrast. So it's not just a monotone one color book. I wanted to have a little bit more depth. And that's all we do for the book. So not too hard, not too, crazy. So we're going to grab, I'm going to start with this lighter yellow color. I'm going to actually do this book's facing away. So there's no pages that you'll see, but I'm going to do this lighter yellow color first. And I'll go back through and add shadow where that book would be resting. Because again, there's going to be a little bit more light coming through on the top and the side there than there is on the side that's facing you. So I'm just going to go in and add that and I'll add in some more shadows again, like I said, where that book's going to be resting. And I tried this color and realized it is the color that we use for the book above it. So I'm going to switch this color here. You can grab the dark brown. It wasn't as contrasty as I wanted it for this book. So I just kind of added it to darken that yellow color. And then I went to the disc in the color picker and just went darker with that same color select. I went darker. So it's still kind of that same color tone. And I like that look a lot better. So that's what I'm doing here. And to blend colors out a little bit more, you can grab those in between colors when you are starting to blend. Just hold your finger down on the color that you want that is in your image, and then the color picker should grab that for you, and then you can use that to blend out further. And I wanted this book to be a little bit darker, so I did use the book color from the upper book there because I wanted this to be slightly darker on the side that's facing you and also on the a little bit on the side where that light's kind of hitting. I'll make the book above it stand out a little bit more because we are going to add pages to the book above it. It's not going to be as or not gonna blend as much as it's looking like it is right now. So we will make it stand out on its own, but I did want to just go a little bit darker on that book. And now we're going to do that same technique we used on the bottom book for the pages. And so we're going to use the lighter color on the right side, the darker color on the left, because again, that's where the shadows are going to be hitting. And so we're just going to keep adding in that color there. And again, we're using the lighter white color for the right side because that's where the highlights are going to be hitting or the light is going to be hitting. And you'll notice that the pages on the left, I kind of erased the details of the pages themselves. I filled it in a little too much. So I'll show you here. I just grabbed the brown color, added in some more of that brown back in, and then I'm going to go back over it with that darker gray to try and pull in more of those pages here. So if you went a little too far, that's okay. Just add a little bit more of that brown in and then go back over it with the gray for the pages. And now I'm going to use this light brown for the top of the book because again, I want it to be lighter on top. I don't want it to be kind of blending in, being all the same color. So we're going to just lighten this up a little bit and then we will add these shadows back in for where that cup would be resting. And I did go a little bit darker on the bottom of the book as well, because again, that one's sitting on the bottom. It's gonna be a little bit darker. So I just went a little darker there. Just wanted to have it be a little bit more distinguished across the book so it's not all the same color. And I'm using that same color to do the shadow on top of the book where that coffee cup is sitting. And you'll see here I'm pressing harder on the pencil, which is giving me more of that pigment. And then I'll go lighter on the edges here to soften it out a little bit. Now let's go ahead and work on the coffee cup. So I'm going to grab this dark blue color. I'm going to work on the inner part of the coffee cup and I'm going to add in some other colors here. So I'll add in some of that darker blue. I'm going to add in some browns as well to this because I want it to look like it has a little bit of a speckled look. But I did forget to do steam coming off of this coffee cup. I'm gonna just say it's mom brain. I just forgot to add it here. You can definitely add steam if you want. You can use that soft brush. That's a Procreate staple. You can use that to add steam above it. But I just, for whatever reason, forgot to include that. Maybe it's just me thinking, my coffee usually gets pretty cold if I have my kids. I'm taking care of my kids. I forget about my coffee, and so by the time I drink it, it's cold anyways, which is why I usually do iced coffee. But definitely feel free to add steam if you want to. I didn't in this image, obviously, so I don't have that outline or that step-by-step process, but essentially just grab a soft kind of whitish gray color. You can use that soft brush, like I mentioned, and then add a little bit of that steam above the coffee cup. And right here, I'm just adding in that blue to the left side to make it a little bit more dark, just to give it more contrast and more shadow. So I'm just adding in the blue. I'm blending it out with the lighter blue. So just keep building up on those layers. And I'm kind of building out the blue color first before I start adding in the brown because it's going to be easier to kind of blend these colors in together. So that's what I did. I added the darker blue here and then adding some mid-tone blues and now adding that lighter blue to blend all of these colors together. And then I'm going to add in some lighter white-ish blue color here. So again, it's a mug, so it's gonna be a little bit glossy. So I want to add a little bit of that white shininess to the edge here. So that's what I'm doing here. And then I'll go back with that mid-tone blue to kind of blend it out a little bit because it is a lot of white. I don't want it to be that much white, and so I'll kind of blend it out to push it more towards that edge. And I'm just going back and forth with these colors because I want to get this area kind of looking a little bit more shiny. So I'm going back in with that lighter white color, and then I'll go back over with the blue. Again, a lot of these building up these layers is just going over and over again with these colors, building it up to look how you want it to look. Don't be afraid to keep building upon that layer. If you're not liking how it looks, just keep adding the colors that you want. Eventually, it will get there. It sometimes can take time to get there, but just keep working on it. It will get to that point. And now I'm just adding in some markings here again to emphasize that there is a little bit of a shine to this coffee mug. So that's what these are supposed to make it look like, that there's that shine. And I'm grabbing that medium tone color, and I'm going to go a little bit lighter and do the outer rim here, just add a little bit of lightness. I don't want to be super bright because the top edge is what's hitting that light closer. So I just want a little bit lighter, just not as white. And now I'm going to add in some brown. I wanted to be teal and brown for this. I really like the colors of these two together. So that's why I'm going in. I'm going to add brown to the bottom, and then I'm going to add in some lighter colors. You'll see kind of the techniques that I used here. So I'm starting with this dark brown first, adding it to the entire bottom area here of the cup, and then we'll build up on it. I am kind of lightly blending it into the blue here. So it's not such a stark difference, but again, we'll keep building up on these layers and making it blend in even further. Make sure again to grab colors in between to help blend it out even further. So that's what I'm doing here, is just holding my finger down, grabbing those in between colors, and just kind of working on blending it out even more. And I'm going to take that same brown and go up the handle as well. I'm kind of sticking more towards the inner part here, and then kind of curving it towards the inside of the handle. And then I'm going to grab this medium brown color and start adding in some mid-tone details as well. And as always, we are still using that circle blend brush. That's typically my one that I use when I'm adding in details. So you'll see that I'm just kind of adding in these mid-tone brown kind of squiggles. I'm very lightly pressing in a lot of these areas. I'm not pressing too hard on that Apple pencil. Some I will, some I won't. It just depends on how much of that color I want to pull in, but I'm trying to do it a little bit lighter. You can always go over it more times, and that will bring that color out as well. But I use that circle blend brush for all of the detail work because it is, or it allows me to add in all of these details very lightly and make it look a little bit more organic to me, make it look a little bit better. So that's why I use that for a lot of things. If I use the circle brush, it's a very stark difference between the colors that I'm adding. Whereas if I use that circle blend brush, it's kind of blending them in a little bit. So you still have a little bit of definition, as you can see here, but it blends it better. It's not as stark. So I added in all these details. You can see I added in some white, I added some dark lines, I added in a lot of different details. And now I'm going back with that original blue color that we used to fill in the shape of the coffee mug, and just lightly kind of spreading these colors out. I like this look. You can keep it how it was before, but I really liked how this was looking, kind of blending it. It almost looks like it is shiny, like it's a glossy finish on this cup, and that's what I like. So I'm going to keep doing this, blend out some of these areas, and then we can move on. Now we have to work on the cactus, so make sure again it's set to alpha lock. Grab that dark greenish color, and we're just gonna start adding in some lines here, kind of curving it up towards the top center there. And you can blend out, so you can see that I'm adding a very dark color and kind of blending it out. I'm just doing this as the base layer, and then we'll add details on top of it, so it'll kind of blend in. It'll make sense here in a second. And now we're creating a new layer, and I'm gonna grab a brown color and I'm gonna turn the brush size down. And I'm just going to start adding in these dots along the lightest part of the cactus. We're going to add spikes off of that. So if you've seen these types of cactus, they have a lot of the pokey kind of spikes off of them. So that's what I'm doing here. So I'm adding in a bunch of these um, kind of light brown circles to the lightest part of the cactus, and I did actually do this on a new layer above it, just because it's a different color and I didn't want to do it directly on the cactus as well. But all of this detail here I'm adding to this new layer here, so all this brown detail that I'm adding in will be on the same layer. And now we're just going to add these spikes. So just kind of go out from the center here. So the ones on the edge, I kind of went more spikes towards the left, but the ones that are coming down the front here, I kind of just did it all around the circle. You can have them going in one direction. You can have them going all different directions like I'm doing here, but I'm just adding in these spikes and we'll add a little bit more detail to this. And you don't have to press too hard when you're doing those spikes. You can do very light spikes, as you can see. But now I'm grabbing in a lighter orange color and just adding a little bit of detail here and there. Again, don't have to press too hard. It will bring in a lot of the color, and it does have to be perfect. You can see I'm kind of just really quickly drawing in these lines. I'm not making it look perfect. I think it looks a little bit better when it's a little messier. And I'm going to grab a little bit of that lighter color even yet and add some of that here and there. Not going too crazy with it because I still want it to be a little bit darker, but I want some brightness to this area as well. And now let's go ahead and work on the raindrop layer. So that layer 10 I mentioned, we're going to do something special with it. Grab that kind of grayish color. It's like the window color that we use, and drag and drop that color to this layer. Then what we're going to do is change the blend mode because that's going to help us. We're going to erase some of that to do the rain. So we're going to do an opacity. We're going to drop that down, and we're going to do multiply as our layer. So drop the opacity down, make it select into multiply, and grab the eraser tool. We're going to erase kind of lines where the raindrops are kind of dropping down from. And I actually have the circle taper brush for this because it'll kind of taper the edges for you so it's not such a stark and it's not going to be like that circled end as you might have noticed from the circle brush. So we're going to just kind of taper some drops down here, and then we're going to add actual raindrops to this. I'll show you what I do with that in a second. And the reason we are erasing from that is because it's pulling that background color that we did at the very beginning into that. So it's looking like there are the colors are kind of coming through from the background or from the raindrops. So now we're going to add the actual raindrops. I'm using the circle blend brush for this. And I just grabbed one of the colors in this area. So I grabbed the color that is kind of peeking through from that area we erased. You could do that for all of these. I am going to change the colors at the end. I'll show you what I do for that here in a second, but I'm just kind of adding in raindrops here and there in the shape, that teardrop shape. So just start doing that. I did it on a new layer because I'm going to add details and things like that here in a second, but just start going through and adding these raindrops where you want them to be. All right, now we have the raindrops done. I'm actually going to duplicate that layer. So swipe left, duplicate, and then I'm doing an alpha lock on that bottom layer, grabbing a darker color and doing fill layer. A reason I'm doing that is to give it some shadow. And then I'm going to change the opacity down a little bit for that shadow layer. Then you can go back to the actual raindrop layer, select alpha lock, and we're going to add in a little bit of lighter details here. So grab a lighter white color. You can still use that circle blend brush, and we're just going to add some highlights to these raindrops. So I'm just kind of going on the bottom right here and then adding a little line on that top left. I'm going to do that to all the raindrops here. And then once we have that added in, let's go ahead and grab that bluish gray color and just add a little bit towards the center of all these raindrops. It's just going to give it a little bit more of that blue color. And then what we're going to do is merge these layers. So merge the raindrop layer with the shadow layer. And we're going to duplicate this and add more raindrops because this is not enough raindrops for me. So I did duplicate it on accident first here. I forgot that I also want to add in that shadow layer. So I just undid that. But go ahead and click into layers. We're going to merge the raindrop with the shadow layer, and then we're going to duplicate that layer. So go ahead and do that. Swipe left to duplicate and move those raindrops around. You can erase some if there's that are overlapping, but I'm just duplicating that entire layer, and then I will update or show you how to update and change the raindrops that are above. So we selected colors that were near where those original raindrops were, but now that we're moving it around, we're not going to have that same color. So I will show you what I do to update the color there, and then we'll be pretty close to being done. And you can repeat that process of duplicating the layer, merging it down, and just keep duplicating as you add more raindrops. It does help to kind of speed things up so you're not just duplicating, that smaller layer 50 times over and then moving it around. So that's kind of what I did here. To update the raindrop colors, go to that raindrop, select the color that's near it, and then it will be in the color picker, and you can drag and drop that color to the center of the raindrop. So as you can see here, I'm picking colors close to the raindrop and dragging it in. It's going to make it look more realistic as raindrops because it's picking up those colors from that background in a raindrop. And if you're not pulling in colors that are near it, it's not going to look natural. So that's what I'm doing here is I'm going to go through all these raindrops, select colors that are close to them and drag and drop it. Once it's in that color picker, drag and drop it into the center of that raindrop, and that should update them to be similar colors as the background. If you make a mistake, just tap both your fingers, two fingers down on the iPad, and that should undo what you did. So I actually put it in like that white section. I dragged the color into the white section, and it changed the whole raindrop to be even lighter than I wanted to. And so I just tapped my two fingers down on the iPad, and it undid that for me. And then I just re-dragged that color back into the right section. So if you make a mistake, that's how you can undo. And this is somewhat tedious of a part here, but it does make it worth it. It will look really great when you're done doing all these individual raindrops. And we're almost done with these raindrops. Once you're done with this, then we're done with our drawing. And there we have our coffee and rain. Thank you so much for joining me today on this relaxing rainy day sketch. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I'd love to know your go-to cozy comfort drink. I'll see everyone in the next video.